Welcome to the Prodigy Way Podcast. I'm your host, John Grammer. So in 2009, God led my parents, Russell and Amy, to step away from their jobs in the public education system and to join him on a mission to reach America's youth through education. Over the years, God has led our amazingly skilled staff here at Prodigy to create what we now refer to as the Prodigy 21. These are the core practices and principles we adhere to in order to create the highest quality and most optimal individualized learning experience for every one of our students. Thank you so much for joining me this week as I sit down with one of our professional educators and we discuss just what makes Prodigy so unique, why we're getting such amazing results, and as we do a deep dive into the Prodigy Way. Joining me today is Jessica Peterson, author of the Prodigy Way. We thought it'd be very special to have her on the first episode.
I should be on the first episode. I'm happy to be here.
And also Brittany Brown, one of our lead high school teachers. And both of these ladies are incredible teachers and Prodigy veterans. And so we're super excited to dive into our first ever episode of the Prodigy Way. We're going to be discussing the topic of low ratio, high relationship, right? This is one of our core values. It was the first topic to come up in the Prodigy Way. So let's talk about how what we do here at Prodigy is different and why it's so important.
So I think this is actually a great starting off point, and it was great for the book because if there's one thing that allows everything else to happen that we do at Prodigy, it is this low ratio, high relationship. The fact that we have 2 teachers in every single classroom. I mean, that's something you don't hear about anywhere.
No.
2 teachers in every single classroom. And not only that, but we're capping the classrooms at 18 students apiece. So you're looking at a ratio of 8 students to 1 teacher. Mm-hmm. Where do you get that ratio? The only other place I know of that you get that ratio is in a baby room at a daycare. That is a ratio that sometimes the government mandates, right? But that ratio allows us to have such deep relationships with our students. So can you share how you implement that in high school, and you've taught junior high as well? Why is the high relationship so important to what we do?
Okay, so the first thing that I have to say to that is it all goes back to Jesus, right? And like what he modeled. And I feel like that is what we are doing at Prodigy. We are modeling what he did. He was 1 teacher with 12 students. And so he was able to reach them. He was able to reach their heart by spending time with them, eating with them, pouring into them, letting them know, like, I care about you. I'm going to spend time with you. And that's exactly what we get to do with all of our students. And so being able to do that is probably one of my biggest reasons that I love Prodigy, right? And so the student honors and respects the teacher. The teacher honors and respects the student in a new light because Christ is at the center.
And that makes learning possible.
It does. It does completely, because it all goes back to their engagement. Because one of the things that she says in the book, in this chapter specifically, let me just read it real quick, but it ties in perfectly with what I'm mentioning right here. It says that small class sizes are one of the greatest gifts that you can give a student or a teacher. Research shows that relationships matter in the learning of students to the tune of higher reading and math scores and higher graduation rates. They engage, like you're keeping their engagement. You're right there with them. Like it's incredible what you can do just by keeping Jesus at the center, because it all goes back to the relationship. And whenever you've got the relationship, you've got them hooked in. And I've got a prime example for that, if I can speak into that real quick. So one of the other things that's really amazing about Prodigy is that we do the whole multi-age classrooms. So we get them for 2 years, right, before they leave us. Well, this week I had a student walk into my room and instantly I was like, oh man, something's off. Like, what's going on? If I wouldn't have had that relationship prior, I probably wouldn't have ever recognized that.
Would have flown under the radar.
It would have. So anyway, she walked in and I was like, oh man. So I motioned her to come over to me and I'm like, hey, what's going on? And before she even spoke a word, she just fell onto my shoulder and just started crying. And just embraced that. And I was like, oh man, what does she need, Lord? And instantly the song from, I forgot, maybe her name's Tasha Layton, but it's like, I can hear the Father singing over me. It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. And so I started singing that over her. And instantly she just starts laughing And she starts she just perked up. And it's like, I said, can you please just repeat that so I know that you believe it? And she did. She repeated it. And then her demeanor just completely shifted. Like, she went from super sad to like, I can conquer the world. And it changed her entire day. She was happy and she was smiling for the rest of the day. But if I were not in tune with who she was as a child, as not just a child, but a young adult here, I wouldn't have been able to pick up on that. I cannot get to the heart of the child if I don't have a relationship with that child.
And I would say young adults more than ever need to feel seen, loved, heard.
They do.
And that's something that we can do. And just on a practical standpoint, how does that kind of stuff happen? Well, when you have 2 teachers in every room and somebody walks into your room, Brittany, a student walks in, and you see they need you, you now have the ability to step aside and spend time with that student and allow the other teacher in the room to take over. And that is something that is so important and something that our teachers are trained to do so well, because it allows us to build those relationships. It allows us to get to the heart of the student. And we know that the best learning happens within relationship. And that relationship, John, you mentioned you can't fly under the radar.
You cannot.
At Prodigy, I kind of always joke, like, we're all up in your business.
We
like,
are.
We know a lot of things about what's going on with each individual child, not just their learning, but who they are as a person, what they're encountering in their personal lives and their family lives. The fact that we spend devotion together and we start our day every morning in prayer with one another is just a huge part of what we do. But that ability for a teacher, I mean, this is something you don't get anywhere. The ability for a teacher to step out and take time with a student while another teacher continues running the show is amazing. I was training a teacher just the other day. That's part of what I do now. And she was talking about how these 3 boys in her class just are not getting along. And she wanted some ideas of what to do. And I said, well, this is what you do. You let your other teacher run the classroom and you pull those 3 boys aside. And I coached her through what kinds of things she would say to those 3 boys to get them to open up about the experiences that they're having and all of that. But the fact that she can pull them aside and take 20 minutes with them could pay dividends the whole rest of the school year by spending the time in those relationships and helping those students work through those issues. And that's something like, I mean, all of our kids right now are facing. They need to learn how to communicate their feelings, and somebody has to guide them in that. And teachers are the best ones to do it because the students are experiencing peer relationships all day long. And helping students navigate those peer relationships is something that is vitally needed in our society. And the fact that we have 2 teachers in every room allows that to happen. So if it's not me as the lead teacher, a lot of the times it's my CT who acts as an assistant who will sometimes pull out the kids, because the CT is also paying very close attention to the students. In fact, a lot of times when I'm running the room and I'm running the class and I've got all my different things that I'm doing, it's the CT who is carefully observing what's happening with each student, their emotions, their struggles, and they partner with me in reaching each child, whatever that struggle may be. And it's something you don't have anywhere else.
You had mentioned the feelings of the child. Like, I also feel like it's important to validate that. Like, it's okay to feel the way you're feeling right now. It's part of being a human. Emotions, feelings, like, feel it, right? And then, like, let's figure out what's wrong. Let's jump the hurdle together. They just need to know that they've got a safe space to release that.
Now, in any given classroom, you have students from all sorts of different backgrounds dealing with all sorts of different issues, with all sorts of different weaknesses and strengths, family situations. In this low ratio, high relationship classroom, when this is a center focus, you have the ability to construct that mutual sense of trust and also safety.
And I want to speak about that safety aspect there for a minute, because, you know, as a mom of a teenager myself, I know that my own teen is not always going to open up to me. And I want my child, especially in those junior high school years, to have a mentor to come alongside, that safe space where they can have their feelings validated, they can share what they need to share. And I can tell you, our junior high and high school teachers have a lot of kids pouring out their hearts to them, saying things to them that they may not necessarily say to their own parents. And you've got the position here, and another value we have at Prodigy is that parent partnership. So the teacher can come in as a bridge between student and parent. The teacher can make parents aware of significant things that students might be dealing with. And because that trust is there, the student trusts you to do it in a loving way that's going to give them what they need ultimately.
Yes. And like there's been times they're like, don't tell my mom. But even though like I kind of want you to tell my mom, right? So it's like we get to be that liaison of let's do this and I'll help you do it. Because maybe so-and-so doesn't know how to tell mom, hey, this just happened. But through me or whichever teacher, you know, we can do that in a healthy way and they feel a lot better about it. And it's nothing against the parent, right? Like I would, you know, my daughter's the same way. She's like, sometimes I want to tell you things and sometimes I don't. And like, that's just a part of relationships. Right. Like relationships can be awkward and they can be hard, like, and that's okay too. It's part of it.
Well, and even on an academic front, we as teachers are going to see things in the classroom that the parents aren't going to see as well. And part of that high relationship, that low ratio, is that we notice things that often could go unseen in a classroom. We have very academically gifted students. We have students all over the spectrum in their abilities. But what I always say to parents and what I always say to kids is there is always something that every individual needs to work on and improve in. And with that low ratio, high relationship, we identify what those things are. And again, we're helping bridge that gap with the parents at home. I'm seeing that when your child faces a struggle, this is their response. Do you see that at home? And then the second part of that is, what do you do at home? What do you see that's effective that can help break through that barrier? So whether it's emotional or academic, which we deal with all day, every day. What does the kid do when they face a struggle in math or when they're facing a struggle in a writing assignment? How do they push through that? Again, those characteristics, it's the character of who the child is and what the child needs to break through that we easily identify because we only have, that 9-to-1 ratio. We have a good ratio that not much flies under the radar like you were talking about.
And they know that. Like, the students know that they're not going to get by with sitting like this. Like, I'm not letting you dwell in that. We're going to move past
We're not letting you rush through things. Like, we know your character. We know what it is that is holding you back in your academics, and we will push you through that and set a high bar and high expectations for that.
Absolutely.
It's always fun seeing new students come in who they try to do that at the beginning, and it just
They
and
do.
then they just come to realize over time, like, oh, that's not going to fly. And then a lot of times you'll see if one of them starts moping and then the teacher like makes eye contact with them, they'll just like grin. They'll just be kind of like, okay.
It's a very special relationship.
It is. It's really sweet.
One of the things, I was doing a lot of interviews for this book, and one of the things that stuck out to me was I was interviewing a high school student, and she said she could go through her whole day and not talk to anybody. Can you imagine?
In a
that?
previous
Her
experience?
whole day,
Yeah.
in a previous experience, and not talk to anybody. And that would never happen here.
Nope.
If you were silent for 15, 20 minutes, somebody's
checking on you.
And you know what? The beautiful thing about that is, though, too, the kids follow that example.
Oh, they do.
So I actually ran into a situation yesterday where a girl was in trouble. Her friend noticed, and she said, do you mind if I talk to her? So this whole model that we have, we're modeling what Jesus did.
We are.
But we're also teaching the students to model what we do.
Yes.
And to see and identify those needs in their peers.
Not even just with, I'm in trouble, but it's like the academic side of being in trouble too. Like, oh, I didn't study for my test. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Like, we had that happen yesterday. We had a quiz, and the students were like, some of them, not very many of them, were like, I didn't study. What am I going to do? And they saw a need. One girl saw a need, and she said, hey, come with me. She pulled the girl to the table and said, sit with me. I'm going to help you. And she started doing flashcards with her. And the girl that she helped made 100. And she just celebrated so big. And she just she clapped and danced and just smiled. And then she hugged that girl. And it's like, it was beautiful. Like, that's what we do.
Yeah, our students, as they move through our program, become so relationally mature.
Yes.
Frankly, so I was with the one of the 5th and 6th grade classrooms yesterday. We went on a field trip. I was documenting it, and then we stopped at a park so that they could play and burn some energy off. There was this random girl there who was their age, and they immediately just like started playing with her, And then at the end, we did a class picture for them. And this girl comes right up to the teacher and goes, "Hey, can I be in your class picture?"
Oh,
So sweet.
And then later I overheard one of the girls from the 5th and 6th grade class talking with her mom saying that girl, we really need to pray for her. And I was just like, man, that's just so cool.
It's
And that's,
relationship at a deep level.
it is. And it was pretty instant too. And it was also, I mean, these are 5th and 6th graders. So imagine after they've gone all the way through high school. And then one thing that we're seeing in today's world is that people don't know how to communicate or connect emotionally, along with a number of other things, but specifically geared towards this low ratio, high relationship, the benefits that these produce. Like the students who go through Prodigy are going to be just on a whole different level than any of their peers. So regardless of what path they decide to take, they're going to be so well prepared for that, because forming relationships is just so vital in anything that you do. We're such relational creatures.
Right. And I think it's that valuing relationship that we teach our students how to do. And part of that is valuing each individual. And that's something that is another very high principle of what we value at Prodigy, teaching students to value one another despite your differences, despite your disagreements or how you look or your appearance or your income background or all of these things, teaching students to value one another. And that's how that genuine connection comes across from these 5th and 6th graders. 5th and 6th graders are oftentimes starting to put their walls up. But here you have students who are genuinely seeing other people, just like we see the kids, they're seeing their peers, and they're seeing the value in each individual, even an individual they don't know. It's amazing.
We're all image bearers of God. And so the fact that our students are able to recognize that and give people the value that they are just innately born with as a result of that is so cool.
Well, and the other part is, relationships are messy. They're not always easy. I can't say that being in kids' business all the time is the easiest thing to do. But it is maybe the best thing we're doing when we're discipling and we're spending time with these students, knowing them as well as we do and discipling them to be healthy in their relationships.
It's tiring and it's taxing, but
it is.
But it's so fulfilling.
It is. It's very rewarding.
That's something I've heard Mrs. Reese say over and over again, is that she's like, I get home at the end of the day and I'm just totally wiped, but I can't wait to go and do it all again.
Wouldn't trade it. Well, another thing too about relationships with, when you look at the bigger picture of it all, like if you are in a leadership role, a leadership position at all, I don't care where you work, you've got to make sure that your relationship with the Lord is right before you can make sure every other relationship in your life is right. So it's Lord first, then your family, then what you do at work. And so even in being a teacher, like, yes, we are so tired by the end of the day. We've got to make sure that we're taking care of our husband, our wife, our children, we're ourselves, right? Like take care of yourself. Make sure that relationship is well taken care of so that you can keep maintaining the other relationships. Because if you do it in a reverse order, like things need an order, right? Like don't do things out of order or it won't work as well. We've seen that. Like on the side of relationships being messy, like make sure everything is in order. I know, just something I've learned over the years.
And this sounds like the thought process of what you might call a gifted teacher. Which is
another principle on the Prodigy Way, another chapter you can read up on.
Yeah. So I think we're reaching a good stopping point here. Now, there's obviously so much to break down in every single one of these topics, which is why we're going to have a dedicated podcast for breaking all of these down. We'll bring in different guests as we go along to hear different viewpoints and such. And even in this topic, like we could probably go on for quite a while longer.
I could.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, and it ties to so many of the other topics as well. But we want for this to be more manageable for, you throw it on, listen to it in the car, like on your way to work or something. So really, we just want to let our Prodigy family and also people who just are passionate about education, we want them to know how is what we're doing different and why is it so crucial and important? Why do we think this is how every classroom should be? So today we talked about low ratio, high relationship in the classroom, our 1 to 9, 1 to 8 or 9 student ratio.
Yeah, depending upon the class.
teacher to student ratio, and there's some really good stuff shared in here, guys. This is great. You both are incredible people.
Well, what I love about this and what I love about the book too, and people have asked me about this, who is the book written for? Well, it's written for educators like you mentioned, but it's just written for anybody who loves children.
Absolutely.
I've had so many grandparents reach out to me and say, like, this is helping me be a better grandparent.
Right.
This is helping me be a better parent. These values are values that we can hold in our lives wherever we go.
Yeah. And I think the same is true. I know we're supposed to be ending this, but I think like the book is not just for teachers, right? It's for everybody, everyone who loves children. But Jesus' model is also for everybody. Even if you're not a teacher, take it to your workplace, take it in your home. Like his model is simple, and we overcomplicate that so many times.
Well, this idea of high relationship, you can be in high relationship wherever you are.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, guys, thanks so much for being here, for your time, and for everything you shared. This was really good. I think
Thanks,
people are
John.
going to love this.
Yeah, thanks for having us.